request po sila, our process would entail that when the committee recommends already to IATF the specific classification of an area, local governments have that parang right to appeal to IATF if they think, based on their experience on the ground, na iba po ang sa kanilang pananaw. So with Cebu Province, they appealed na instead of MECQ, it should just be GCQ with heightened restrictions. Pinag-usapan po ito with the ILG, and it was parang agreed on that Cebu Province will be on GCQ with heightened restrictions, pero yung pong mga lugar na matataas ang kaso within the province will be placed on in MECQ. So it was like a granular lockdown but still having that heightened restrictions in Cebu Province. As to the Aklan po, which appealed to be escalated to MECQ, they are currently on GCQ status. Nakita ho natin na yung kanilang provincial healthcare utilization, bagamat wala pa ho dun sa sinasabi nating high risk, it was already at 65%. Malapit na po siya mag-high risk. And ang pinaka nakita natin, yung pagsipa po ng kaso dito sa lugar na ito. Ang kanilang average daily attack rate was at 22 per 100,000 population, na mataas na po ito kapag tinignan natin, and their 2-week growth rate is really positive for these past weeks. That's why we have escalated and we have complied with their appeal. Yun pong sa Apayao naman was escalated to MECQ because their healthcare utilization, pag tinignan natin, 98% na po. Ibig sabihin yung paggamit po ng mga hospital beds sa lugar na yan ay malapit nang mapuno ang ospital, at kailangan po natin i-preserve yan. So we need to lock it down first para mas makapag-prepare po ang sistema ng lugar na yan. And as to Laguna, it was escalated to MECQ because we saw the increase in the number of cases. Actually, noon pong nag-plus areas tayo, naipababa po ng National Capital Region at ibang lugar sa plus areas ang kanilang mga kaso. Ngunit ang Laguna po, patuloy po na nag-plateau siya, hindi siya tuluyang bumaba. And that, pagkita natin doon sa detection ng Delta variant, meron pala silang Delta variant at patuloy pong tumataas ang kanilang kaso. Kaya kami po ay nagdesisyon na kailangan na pong i-escalate muna para makapaghanda po ang kanilang sistema, and we can further contain the transmission of the disease in their area.
Maraming salamat, Vergere. Kasama rin po natin ngayon ang ating Police Lieutenant General Israel Efraim Dixon. Siya po ang Deputy Chief ng PNP for Operations at siya rin po ang Commander ng Joint Task Force COVID Shield. Sir, ano ba ho ang mga hakbang na patutupad po ng ating kapulisan ngayong linggo at mas importante doon sa 2 linggo ng ECQ? Ngayong linggo pong ito ay meron na tayong restriction sa mobility at pinagbabawal na po ang non-essential travel to and from Metro Manila plus areas, no? So, ano pong sitwasyon natin ngayon? General Dixon.
Salamat po, Sir Sec Harry at Sec Yusek Vergere at sa mga nanonood.
Tumba siya?
Kasama po yung Sir,
Ano daw?
ayon sa IATF Resolution number 130-A at sa kautusan po ng ating SILG Secretary Ed Anyo at ang aming Chief Deputy na si Police General Guillermo Lorenzo Eleazar, ang inyong Joint Task Force COVID Shield ay nag-establish ng iba't ibang quarantine checkpoints. Makikita po sa TV o sa inyong screen ang 75 na na-establish na checkpoints sa mga area ng NCR Plus Bubble, at ito po ay natemployan ng 1,090 na PNP personnel, at ito po ay naayon sa kautusan at provision ng IATF Resolution 130-A na magpaigting na po tayo ng mga quarantine checkpoints para mapigilan o makontrol ang paggalaw ng mga tao, lalong-lalo na po ang hindi authorized person outside of their residence na lumabas at pumasok dito sa NCR Plus area. na kinabibilangan ko ng NCR sa probinsya ng Bulacan, Cavite, Rizal, at Laguna. At base po sa aming datos, may 75 na po kaming na-establish na quarantine checkpoints sa mga boundaries, sa mga areas na ito. At ito po ay minaman ng ating mga kapulisan sa tulong din po o support ng ating mga local LGUs na malapit sa lugar na yon at ang ating mga allied agencies na bibilangan ng ating DOH, mga BFP o Bureau of Fire Protection at mga force multipliers na sumusuporta po sa inyong mga kapulisan. Kung nais niyo pong makita ang sinasabi ko namin mga apor or authorized person to move or lumabas o pumasok sa mga borders na binabantayan ng inyong mga kapulisan, at ito po ay mga sumusunod. Ito po ang tinatawag namin mga apos. Sila po ang una, employers and workers involved in essential manufacturing, establishments, services, and industries. Ang mga involved po sa manufacturing ay ang mga sumusunod. Sila po ay mga persons na gumagawa ng basic food products, essential products, medicine and medical supplies, and the entire value chain of all food and beverages, essential and hygiene products, medicines and vitamins, medical products such as PPEs, masks, gloves, at pet food, feeds, fertilizers, and pesticides, equipment or products necessary to perform construction works. Ang mga employers and workers of the following establishments, sila rin po ay apor, retail establishments, ito po ay mga groceries, supermarkets, hypermarkets, pharmacies, and the likes. Food preparation establishments, insofar as take-out and delivery services, media establishments, hotels or similar establishments accommodating distressed overseas Filipino workers and stranded Filipino or foreign nationals, repatriated OFWs in compliance with approved quarantine protocols, non-OFWs who are required to undergo mandatory facility-based quarantine, healthcare workers and other employees, printing establishment authorized by BIR and other government agencies, all other establishment necessary for buying and selling of consumer goods or services via internet. Employers and workers involved in the following services: hospitals and medical clinics, dental clinics and other health clinics, laundry shops, food preparation and water refilling stations, logistics service providers, power energy, water, internet, service providers, cable television providers, IT and telecommunication supplies and facilities, including their third-party contractors and service providers. Delivery services, whether or not e-commerce platform, in-house or outsourced. Essential and priority construction projects, whether public or private, in accordance with the guidelines issued by the DPWH. Employers and workers involved in the following services shown on the screen are the public and private financial services providers involved in the distribution of government grants and amelioration subsidies, water collection, treatment and supply, waste collection, treatment and disposal, sewerage, repair and installation of machinery and equipment, repair and maintenance of motorized and non-motorized vehicles, including the sales of spare parts, installation of machinery and equipment, gasoline stations, electricity and gas supply, postal and courier service, real estate.
General, sandali lang po. General,
Yes, sir.
sandali lang po. We would like to congratulate Nesty Petesio po. Siya po ay nanalo ng silver. Ngayon lang po, no? Ang nanalo po ng ginto ay ang boksingero galing Japan. But nonetheless, napakagaling po ng pinakitang lakas at gilas ng ating Nesty Petesio, no? Congratulations, Nesty Petesio, for the silver in boxing. Ito pong kauna-unang pagkakataon na nagkaroon tayo ng mga kababaihang mga boksingero, and it was a silver immediately. We are proud of you, Nesty. Yes, the General, please continue.
Pinagpapatuloy ko po ang pag-mention ng mga apos under services, yung funeral and embalming, veterinary, technical and testing analysis, security and investigation, rental and leasing, employment, manpower services or essential activities, public transport providers and operators. Employers and workers engaged in the following industries: agriculture, fisheries, forestry, mining and quarrying, electronic commerce companies, export-oriented companies, business process outsourcing companies, money transfers, banks and capital markets, microfinance institutions and credit cooperatives, shipping, and airline. Sa mga other authorized persons outside residence po, ito po, officials and employees of all agencies and instrumentalities of government, including GOCCs and LGUs, health and emergency frontliners, officials and employees of foreign diplomatic missions and international organizations, outbound and inbound international passengers and driver, delivery personnel and cargo vehicles with or without load, at least at the most 3. Employees of critical transportation facilities, construction workers accredited by DPWH to work in quarantine-related facilities and government infra projects, those traveling for medical or humanitarian reasons, pastors, priests, and imams or such other religious ministers whose movements shall be related to the conduct of necrology or funeral rites. Individuals preferably 21 to 59 years old, availing essential goods and services, teacher, professors, and other staff, lawyers who will provide legal representation, immediate family members of the deceased who died of causes other than COVID-19. And the number 3, ito po ay programa ng ating pamahalaan during the ECQ. Those individuals scheduled for availing vaccination. Ito po ang mga list of authorized persons outside the respective residences. Sir.
Thank you very much, Police Lieutenant General Israel Efraim Dixon. Babalik muna tayo kay Yusek Vergere dahil si Yusek Vergere po ay tinanong lamang, sinagot lang yung aking mga katanungan kanina, no? So Yusek Vergere, for your prepared presentation, please. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Harry. Magandang hapon po ulit sa inyong lahat. Ako po ay magbibigay lang ng kaunting situationer para sa COVID-19 dito sa ating bansa. Can we have the next slides? The impact of Delta variant is now observed nationally and in select regions and areas of the country. Half of our provinces, highly urbanized cities, and independent component cities already showing increase in the number of cases and our healthcare utilization. Given ongoing Delta variants of concern transmission, we need to immediately address observed case increases, closely monitor healthcare utilization, and consider implementing higher community quarantine as preemptive measures to contain the Delta spread. All localities whose cases and healthcare utilization are high and critical risk must urgently increase their health system's capacity to prevent fatalities from occurring resulting from poor accessibility. All localities exhibiting case increases but healthcare utilization are retained at low to moderate risk must likewise increase their health system's capacity to prevent being overwhelmed. Next slide, please. So let me begin by giving a brief situation of our COVID-19 pandemic in our country. As of August 2, we have a total confirmed cases of 1,605,762. 3.9% are active cases, 94.3% are recoveries, and 1.75% are deaths. Looking more closely, we have 96.7% who are asymptomatic, mild or moderate, 3.3% or 2,066 cases are severe or critical. The top 5 regions contributing to these new cases being reported are the National Capital Region, Region 4A, Region 7, Region 3, and Region 6. And the 5 areas contributing to the new cases are Cavite, Laguna, Quezon City, Bulacan, Cebu City, and Bohol. Next slide. So this is our epidemic curve. We saw a decline since our peak in cases for the first week of April. But since May, however, cases started to slowly rise again. Looking at the contribution of each region to the cases, we can see that since the increase of cases, National Capital Region has generally gone down. So these are the dark blue bars, while Region 6 at light blue bars, and the other regions, the black bars, showed consistent increase and are now taking up a larger portion of the total number of cases in the country. However, the decline in the National Capital Region cases seems to have stopped or slowed down. The national cases saw an increase in the recent week. Cases from July 27 to August 2 recorded 7,283 cases per day, an increase of 1,348 cases per day compared to the previous week's 5,935. Next slide. Disaggregating our epidemic curve into major island groups and the NCR plus areas, we have noted that first, all areas are showing increase in the number of cases. NCR and NCR plus areas are showing a steep increase. The rest of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao exhibits a slight increase in the number of cases. Next slide. Nationally, our 2-week growth rate is higher compared to the previous 3 to 4 weeks and is now exhibiting a positive growth at 29% in the recent 1 to 2 weeks. Our average daily attack rate, on the other hand, is still at moderate risk, showing an increase in the recent week at 6 cases for every 100,000 individuals. We would like to flag the National Capital Region, Region 7, Region 1, Region 2, CAR, and Region 10 with high-risk classification based on its moderate 2-week growth rate and high-risk ADAR. Region 1 and Region 2 also have high-risk ICU utilization. Note that HCUR is based on the maximum between the beds and the mechanical ventilators utilized allotted for COVID-19 in that specific area. Apart from these areas, we have Regions 4A, Region 3, Region 12, which are currently having positive 2-week growth rate and all of the regions in the country. The National Capital Region remains to be at moderate risk with 2-week growth rate at high risk and ADAR. And it is currently at high risk classification already. ADAR also went from 4.8 cases to 8.9 cases per 100,000 population. Next slide. So we now have 36 areas with moderate to high risk classification and healthcare capacity at low to moderate risk. 8 areas are found to have local Delta cases. The rest of the areas are seen in the next slide. Next slide, please. So these are the other 36 areas where you can see at the... Next slide, please. Yeah. Where you can see, next slide, where we can see at the last column of this slide, you'd see the total Delta variant cases. So next slide. So we have 21 areas flagged due to their cases have both moderate to high risk classification and high to critical healthcare utilization rates. 11 of the 21 areas have local Delta cases. So we have Ilocos Norte, Cagayan, Nueva Vizcaya, Bataan, Angeles City, Laguna, Pampanga, and the other areas that are identified here. Please take note again of the colored pink and the colored red areas because these are the indications that there are high risk. These areas are high risk and up to critical risk in terms of utilization and risk classification based on the number of cases. Next slide. In the national level, deaths are declining. However, there was evident increase in the deaths for Regions 3 and Region 7, shown in this slide. Next slide. Next slide. In NCR, 7-day moving average shows continuous increased trend as cases in the recent 7 days have exceeded the previous 7 days by 607 cases. So we now have an average daily reported case of 1,535 here in the National Capital Region. Next slide. All of the areas in the National Capital Region have positive 2-week growth rates. Pateros and Malabon are at critical risk, having high-risk 2-week growth rate and average daily attack rate. Apart from these two areas, 13 areas have high-risk ADARs. These are Makati, San Juan, Pasay, Las Piñas, Navotas, Muntinlupa, Parañaque, Valenzuela, Pasig, Mandaluyong, Taguig, Manila, and Quezon City. Furthermore, it can be seen here that Las Piñas currently has a high ICUR or intensive care utilization rate. It is at critical risk level, while Muntinlupa and Quezon City have high-risk ICURs. 9 out of the 7 cities in NCR are with Delta variants as of August 1 of this year. Next slide, please. Overall, NCR, HCUR, and ICUR are at low risk in the district level. 2nd District and 4th District already have a moderate risk HCUR, while the rest of the districts are at low risk. For NCR, we currently have 9,256 total beds dedicated for COVID with a utilization rate of 47%. We have 1,140 ICU beds and the current ICU utilization is at 55%. Next slide, please. In addition to our indicators, we have added the spending ER admissions in the National Capital Region, which we are seeing to have been increasing since the start of June. Next slide, please. Shown in this slide is the mortality curve in the National Capital Region. It can be seen that the number of deaths started to decrease in April and continue to do so in these recent weeks. So for the NCR plus areas, next slide. In plus areas, all areas are showing an upward trend in cases. Cavite and Bulacan with the fastest increase in the number of cases. Next slide. For plus areas, all areas are with positive 2-week growth rate. Laguna and Cavite have high-risk average daily attack rates and intensive care utilization rates and are both at high-risk classification. The rest of the areas have their healthcare utilization and ICU utilization at low to moderate risk. Next slide, please. So going to our biosurveillance efforts in our country, next. Of the 8,309 sample sequence assigned with a lineage as of July 28, 25.8% of samples were positive for the Beta variant or the South African lineage. 22.3% of samples were positive for the Alpha variant or the UK lineage. 2.6% or 216 samples are positive for the Delta variant, and 0.02% or 2 samples are positive for the Gamma variant. Next slide. Among the 216 Delta variant cases in the country, 190 have recovered, 9 individuals died, 17 remain to be active after validation and repeat RT-PCR conducted by our local epidemiology and surveillance units. 48 of them are returning overseas Filipino workers, 165 are local cases, and 3 cases are still being verified if they are local or returning overseas Filipino. 54% or 117 are males, and cases belong to the age group from less than 1 year old to 79 years old. As to vaccination status, for those with details, 14 cases received 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccine, 11 cases received only 1 dose, while 46 cases are unvaccinated. And the vaccination status of the rest are still being verified. So next slide. So the next few weeks are crucial for us. Through the learnings we had from our past experience, we have identified critical action points to mitigate the possibilities of severe increase in the number of cases. To highlight the pivotal role that individuals' collective behavior plays in our pandemic response, we have identified 3 special areas of focus. These are improving our community response, enhancing our hospital response, and finally, continuous vaccination. For our community-level response, we call on the continuous cooperation of our local government as leaders of our communities and frontline responders. The national government will be providing targeted attention to high-risk areas. We will continue to reinforce doors 3 and 4 by controlling the borders, both local and international. We call on all of our local chief executives to utilize the barangay code to conduct active case finding, through which we can already shorten from detection to isolation of cases to less than 5 days. We are already recontracting hotel temporary treatment and monitoring facilities for Oplan Kalinga. The national government and the local governments are now contracting telemedicine providers to prompt triaging and consultations. We are preparing transportations, hospitals, and burial sites. Laboratories, hospitals, and local governments are required to submit daily and without fail their accurate and up-to-date case data. To prepare our health facilities in managing the increasing cases, especially severe and critical, we have requested our hospitals through our One Hospital Command Center to monitor and secure the following. We should stockpile on essential COVID medicines and commodities, which includes ensuring a 30-day buffer for PPEs, reagents, and other medical supplies, ensuring the benefits of healthcare workers, proper triaging and transferring of mild cases to temporary treatment and monitoring facilities, adding 30 to 50% bed capacity by repurposing hospital facilities and minimizing elective cases, linking our hospitals with our quarantine facilities for a step-down approach, encouraging them to expand, capacitate, and maximize telemedicine providers. Oxygen plants should be ready to produce twice their monthly production as projected, and instructed PhilHealth to ensure the provision of COVID-19 benefits for both hospitalized and home care patients. And lastly, the National Vaccine Operations Center will be doing the following actions: ensuring continuity of vaccination program, increasing coverage for the high-risk groups, especially the A2, A3, A1 in high-risk areas, implementing vaccination site contingency plan, work schedules for vaccination sites, planning on the work schedules of the vaccination workforce, and lastly, strict scheduling and pre-registration of the vaccination sites. So I would like to emphasize these individual actions that we can do to prevent the transmission of COVID-19. If we can only do this correctly and consistently, we can be protected with this variant that we call the Delta variant. First, ensure good ventilation and continue doing mask, hugas, and iwas. Whenever we are indoors, we have to ensure there is good ventilation. Transmission increases as more people go out and mix together. Second, get the job done. We need to help our loved ones and encourage them to get vaccinated, especially our elderlies and those with underlying medical conditions, to get vaccinated as soon as possible. Get vaccinated when it is your turn and complete your doses as scheduled. Third, when in doubt, isolate and quarantine the patient. We need to immediately isolate if we start experiencing any symptoms and consult your physicians through telemedicine hotlines. Coordinate with your local governments through the barangay health emergency response teams. Lastly, share responsibly, and think before you click. We are all responsible for the kind of information we create and we share to our peers and loved ones. We need to combat misinformation and disinformation. Stay informed, get and share information only from reputable sources. And lastly, while we are still collecting sufficient evidence to declare community transmission of the Delta variant, it is important that we already act as if there is already community transmission. Our numbers or indicators may differ, but trends say the same thing. Cases are rising. Hence, our unified strategy should be to focus on what we need to do now. We need to act now, both as individuals and as a community. Sa mga susunod po na linggo, bukod na nais po nating mapigilan ang pagkalat ng sakit at pagdami ng mga namamatay, ito na rin po ang oras para mapalakas natin ang ating health system. Marami pa po tayong natutunan na mula sa nakaraan. Sa pamamagitan nito, mapapalakas po natin lalo ang ating komunidad, mga ospital, border, and vaccination response. Lagi po nating tatandaan, we are not defenseless. Marami na po tayong natutunan, marami na po tayong armas na meron sa ngayon para labanan po ang sakit na ito. So that is all, Secretary. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Yusek Vergere. Punta na po tayo sa ating open forum. Go ahead, Yusek Roque.
Yes, good afternoon, Secretary Roque, sa ating po mga bisita. Question from Laila Sanavera of Inquirer. Secretary Galvez said the number of vaccinated senior citizens have barely increased due to their hesitancy, and this poses a challenge. The government has already been conducting information drive. What do they think are the factors contributing to this hesitancy? What else can the government do to convince the elderly to get vaccinated?
Alam mo, kung kahit anong sabihin ko, will be conjecture or speculation. Pero may mga ilang dahilan dyan. Unang-una, may mga lolo-lola na mas gustong bigyan ng prioridad yung mga mas bata. Pangalawa, yung mga lolo-lola meron natatakot na pumunta doon sa mga vaccination centers, no? Dahil baka doon pa sila mahawa. No? At saka pangatlo, may mga lolo-lola na siyempre nagiging concerned din sa safety. Pero ulitin lang po natin, no? Wala naman pong bakuna na inauthorize ng ating FDA at ng WHO. WHO na rin po nagsabi, lahat ng bakunang ginagamit natin ay nasa emergency use list po ng WHO na hindi po napatunayang ligtas at epektibo. Pangalawa, kung ano pa yung mga concerns, pwede naman pong pumunta sa vaccination center na safe, mag-mask at mag-face shield lamang at dumistansya at mababawasan naman po yung risk kung tayo po magpapakuna. Siguro po the best incentive is, mga lolo-lola, siyensya na po nagsabi, kayo po talaga ang pinaka-at risk dahil dito sa COVID-19 ito. At ang protection po talaga natin, kung gusto pa natin mapasama ang ating mga apo, ay magpapakuna na po tayo.
From Chris Jose of Remate, reaction daw po ng Malacanang na nanguna ang mag-amang Pangulong Duterte at Mayor Sara sa presidential at vice presidential survey na ginawa po ng Octa Research nitong nakaraang buwan. Lumabas sa tugon ng Masa National Survey ng Octa na ginawa sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa simula July 12 hanggang 18 na 28% ng adult Filipino respondents ang suportado ang probable presidential bid ni Mayor Sara election 2022. Similar question po yan with Ivan Mayrina ng GMA News.
Nagpapasalamat po kami sa patuloy na tiwala ng ating tambayan sa ating presidente at kay Mayor Sara Duterte. Malinaw naman po yan na hindi natin maiiwasan, no? Na talagang ang suporta kay Mayor Sara ay pagsuporta rin sa ating presidente. Maraming salamat po.
From Sherry Ann Torres ng ABS-CBN, your reaction to Senator Drilon's statement on his information that from 2021's 19.2 billion fund, NTF-LCAP's proposed 2022 will increase to 40 billion. Drilon sees this increase as an, I quote, election giveaway, and which he said is unacceptable in the face of growing threats of COVID-19 virus.
Wala po akong reaction dyan dahil wala pa po akong alam kung magkano talaga ang magiging budget sa 2022 para sa LCAP. Itong budget pong ito ay piniprint pa lamang. So hindi ko pa po nakikita. So hindi ko po alam kung ano naging basihan ni Senator Drilon. No? Pero meron naman po tayong mga safeguards, no, sa ating Omnibus Election Code. Pinagbabawal po kahit anong mga infrastructure projects sa panahon po ng campaign period. Ito nga po ay para maiwasan na magamit ang pondo ng gobyerno for infrastructure for election partisan purposes.
Ang sunod po niyang tanong, whether there is an increase or not, how can the palace ensure that NTFL CAP funds will not be used by the administration or LGU officials for election purposes?
Yung batas na po natin nagsasabi, magkakaroon po tayo ng infrastructure ban during election period.
From Cedric Castillo ng GMA News, base po sa pag-aaral ng Japanese researchers, natuklasan na 3 klase ng mutations sa spike protein ng Lambda variant ay maaari magbigay sa virus ng resistensya laban sa vaccine-induced antibodies.
Well, siguro si Doktora Vergere kailangan sumagot niyan dahil kinakailangan dalubhasa. Ma'am? Excuse me, Vergere.
Yes, sir. No? So ito pong Lambda variant ay patuloy pong pinag-aaralan ng ating Philippine Genome Center. Pero sa ngayon po, wala pa po tayong detection ito out of the more than 8,000 plus samples that we have sequenced in the country. Ito pong Lambda variant na ito ay unang na-identify dito sa South American countries kung saan sinasabi nila ito ay mas nakakapanghawa at sinasabi nila na meron din itong escape mechanism when it comes to our vaccines. So pinag-aaralan pa rin po ito lahat. Wala pa po tayong sufficient evidence for this but we will continuously monitor.
Ang sunod po niyang tanong, mabilis din ba na makapag-upgrade ng bakuna ang pharma companies o posible daw pong humantong sa puntong hindi na uubra ang vaccine sa COVID? Yusek
Yes po, Yusek Roque. So pag tinignan natin sa ngayon, ang ating mga bakunang meron tayo currently ay epektibo naman dito sa mga variants na meron sa atin ngayon. But as viruses continue to mutate, manufacturing companies tries to adapt. Ang ginagawa po nila ay kung ano po yung nagiging mutation at pagbabago dun sa virus, ina-adapt po nila yung kanilang mga bakuna. But one thing I can tell you, hindi po mabilis gumawa ng bakuna. It takes years to make a vaccine. So ngayon po lahat, because of public health emergency, binibilisan, pinag-aaralan. So ganun din po ang ginagawa ng ating manufacturers so that the vaccines will be appropriate to manage the specific type of virus where the vaccines are needed. So titignan mo natin for this next generation vaccines na apparently may lalabas naman po in the coming weeks or in the coming years, next year siguro po.
Opo. Ang sunod po niya tanong, kumusta daw po yung monitoring ng Department of Health tungkol sa Lambda variant?
Hanggang sa ngayon nga po, katulad ng sabi ko, wala pa po tayong nadidetect of this variant of interest dito po sa ating bansa.
From Jerome Aningo, PDI for Yusek Vergere, Dr. Salvania said yesterday that one major reason daw po for the lockdown is to keep our healthcare system from being overwhelmed. Di ba dapat daw po this time, nearly 1 year and 6 months since COVID reached the Philippines, our healthcare system should already be able to withstand surges. When will the country be able to reach the sufficient number of hospital beds for severe critical cases and TTMFS for mild and asymptomatic cases?
Yes, Yusek Roque, no? So gusto ko lang ipaalam sa ating mga kababayan, no country has ever been prepared for this SARS-CoV-2 virus. Kung dati ang ating pong ine-estimate, pinagpaplanuhan yung original strain ng virus, yung B614G. At sinasabi nun, 1:2. May isang pasyente makakapanghawa, 1 hanggang 2 tao. Dumating po ang UK variant. Ang naging strain nito, kung kanyang variant na ito, can infect more than the original virus from Wuhan. So ito po ay tumaas na maaaring makapag-infect hanggang 4. Ngayon po we have the Delta variant and it has also increased transmissibility na hanggang 8 naman po. So nakikita po natin na pataas ng pataas ang requirements and we are trying to prepare, we're trying to catch up. Kaya kahit nga po tignan natin sa ibang bansa, talagang hirap na hirap din po. It's a challenge really for all countries. Pero what would be most important, we are preparing. Meron na po tayong set baseline on the different resources we have. Itinataas na lang ng itinataas para po nakakapag-manage tayo as the characteristics of the virus becomes different every time.
Bago tayo magpatuloy, breaking lang po. Nakakuha po tayo ng komunikasyon kay Mayor Ahong ng Lapu-Lapu City at yung kanyang EO40 daw po na nagsasabi na hindi po pwedeng pumasok sa mga commercial centers ang non-vaccinated has been revoked. Ulitin ko po, yung controversial na EO40 sa Lapu-Lapu City has been revoked dahil ang Lapu-Lapu City po ay napasa ilalim na sa MECQ. So wala na pong dahilan para ipatupad ang EO40 dahil yun po ay para sa deklarasyon ng MGCQ lamang. Pero binabalikta rin ni Mayor Ahong na dahil nga daw po sa kanyang EO, talaga naman pong sumipa yung daily rate ng kanyang pagbabakuna from 2,000 to an average of 6,000 a day. At kahapon daw po ay umabot sa record-breaking 8,200 individuals at ang total na nababakunahan na niya ay 39,000 persons sa loob lamang ng 6 na araw, no? So, ang sabi rin po niya, hindi na kinakailangan talagang ipatupad ang kanyang EO dahil nagpapabakuna na ang mga taga Lapu-Lapu City. Congratulations sa ating mga kababayan sa Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu. Go ahead please for your next question.
Yes, Secretary, tanong pa rin po ni Jerome Aning ng PDI. For Secretary Roque, if we do not want our hospitals overwhelmed by severe critical cases among the elderly and sickly, hindi kaya mas makakatipid ang government to just track down and vaccinate all such person instead of shutting down the economy of the entire Metro Manila? NEDA Secretary Carl Chua said each week of ECQ and NCR will cost 105 billion pesos. Surely it would not cost the government 200 billion pesos to locate and inoculate all the remaining A1, A2, A3 people for the NCR LGUs and set up enough TTMFs for mild and asymptomatic cases.
Jerome, kasama yan sa ating strategiya. Kaya nga po kinukumpirma ko po na itong lockdown na 2 linggo beginning sa 6, sasabayan po natin ng 4 million na vaccination sa Metro Manila alone. No? Pero hindi talaga po solusyon ang bakuna dahil ang bakuna sisipa lang po ang effectivity niyan mga 6 weeks after, no? Dahil hindi po siya kaagad effective. Kaya kinakailangan pa rin ng mask, hugas iwas at saka yung ating PDITR at kinakailangan pa rin po nating mag extreme measure na ECQ dahil nga po kinakailangan pabagalin. No? Pero kasama po talaga sa response ng gobyerno ang mabilisang pagbabakuna. 4 million po, inapprove na po para sa Metro Manila dahil alam naman po natin na kapag na-contain natin ang virus sa Metro Manila, makukontain din natin yung pagkalat sa buong Pilipinas. No? So kabahagi po yan ng ating strategiya. At totoo po, naintindihin po namin na talagang napakamahal ng halaga ng lockdown. Pero hindi naman po natin i-impose yan kung hindi po talaga magdudulot ng mas malaking problema kung hindi tayo magpala-lockdown. Ulitin ko po, no? Sang-ayon po doon sa pag-aaral ng FASTER, 525,000 po pagkatapos lamang ng Setyembre kung mananatili tayo sa GCQ. At tingin ko po, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng sapat na hospital, beds at ICU units na para alagaan yung napakadaming kinakailangan mga hospital kung ang total numbers will be 525,000. So paunawa po, no? Pero hindi po natin ginagawa ito for no reason at all. Ito po talaga is to save lives.
From Joseph Moro of GMA News, for Yusek Berhere, at what point do we consider the increase as a surge?
As what we had been explaining in the past, kasi po yung surge hindi po siya recognized in epidemiological terms. So, ang surge po in familiar language, ito po yung rapid rise and big increase in the number of cases. So, pag tinignan ho natin ang ating mga datos, hindi po natin, we will not rely on our current metrics na high risk bago po tayo magkaroon ng deklarasyon na mataas na ang kaso at kailangan na po nating itaas ang restrictions. We are lowering our thresholds because of the Delta variant's transmissibility pattern, kung saan napakataas ng kanyang transmissibility, ang kanyang viral load ng isang tao ay napakataas, therefore ang pagkakahawaan ay talagang mabilis. So ngayon po, when we talk about our metrics, nasa moderate risk pa lang po ang ating mga lugar, atin na pong sinasound ng alarm at atin na pong gagawan ng preemptive restriction sa mga lugar natin.
Second question niya, do we have enough oxygen for our hospital? How many for NCR sa bansa? And how about medicines?
Yes, no, currently meron naman po tayong sapat. No? The inventory was done by the DOH together with the Department of Trade and Industry. Ang ginawa po ng DOH, minapa po natin lahat ng current supplies ng ating mga hospital, both public and private, nationally, pati po yung kanilang needs per day, yung kanilang requirements per day. At napag-alaman din natin yung namang production galing po sa DTI side ay sufficient din. So we are requiring about 560 tons of oxygen or cylinder tanks per day of oxygen, and the production is at 580 cylinder tanks, tons of cylinder tanks per day ng oxygen. So may surplus tayo, pero ang sinasabi po kasi ng eksperto, if you have the Delta variant at nagtaas talaga yung mga kaso nyo, you will require twice as much as what you are requiring right now for oxygen. So ngayon, tumaas po ang requirement natin to almost 600 tons ang kinakailangan natin, at na-communicate naman po natin yan sa ating mga producers ng oxygen, pati dun sa mga oxygen generation plants natin dito sa ating bansa.
Opo. From Ian Cruz ng GMA News, yung unang tanong niya ay nasagot na ni Secretary Roque about yung 4 million doses sa during ACQ sa NCR. Ang second question niya, paano daw po ipatutupad ang no walk-in policy sa vaccination?
Iiwan na po natin yan sa mga LGUs, no? At nangako naman po ang mga LGUs sa pamamagitan po ni Chair Abalos na 250,000 a day ang babakunahan nila, no? So ang komputasyon ko po, 250,000 a day at 4 million yung karagdagang supply nila, makakatapos po sila ng 4 million vax in 16 days, no? So kayang-kaya po yan, no? At yan ang 250 po ay minimum yan, no? Inaasahan natin dahil karamihan naman po ay hindi magtatrabaho, makakaya po mas marami pa than 250 a day. Now, kapag nakamit nga pala po natin yung additional 4 million jobs, that will bring our total vaccinated individuals sa Metro Manila to around 45%. 5% na lang po, pwede na tayo magkaroon ng population protection sa Metro Manila.
Opo. From Red Mendoza of Manila Times for Yusek Berhere, may kumakalat po daw sa social media na pwede nang mag-apply for ng yellow card for COVID-19 sa Bureau of Quarantine, and nagkakaubusan daw po ng slot sa Bureau of Quarantine Center para mag-apply dito. Advisable ba ito, and will this be enough for international travel? Ano po ang advice nyo sa mga nag-a-apply dito?
Yes po, no? So kailangan maintindihan natin, kababayan, ito pong yellow card ng Bureau of Quarantine has been used for decades already by our government, no, through our Bureau of Quarantine. This is part of our international health regulation agreements with the other countries, where if you have this yellow card, you will need to comply with the medical requirements of another country. Halimbawa, pag pumunta po kayo sa Africa, kailangan nyo ng bakuna ng yellow fever, magpapabakuna kayo, and that yellow card will give you that certification that you received the vaccine. So when you go to Africa, makakapasok kayo sa kanilang bansa. Ngayon, dito po sa ating pagbabakuna ng COVID-19, nung pinag-usapan po ng IATF, what will be our means to validate our vaccinations dito sa Pilipinas to make it official when you go abroad. And this BOQ yellow card was identified as one of those mechanisms na pwede nating ma-validate ang ating mga bakuna through this BOQ yellow card. Also, those coming abroad, maaari rin po pagdating nila dito, maaari yung mechanism ng BOQ ay makapag-validate and makapag-certify din for them. So these are mechanisms for us for verification of our vaccination status. Yun pong sinasabing nauubusan na ng slots, hindi po yun. Kasi may schedules po tayo. Hindi po lahat ay na-accommodate per day kasi madami talaga ang nangihingi ngayon. So look for your schedule, find your schedule, and then you can go there and get your yellow cards.
Opo. For Secretary Roque, tanong pa rin po ni Red Mendoza ng Manila Times, too late na ba ang naging response ng lockdown ng gobyerno? Marami ang nagsasabi na hindi proactive ang naging response ng gobyerno sa Delta variant, kundi naging reactivate ito.
Mali po yan. Mali po yan. Isang linggo nga namin binigyan ng palugit ang publiko, no, para paghandaan po itong lockdown ng ECQ. Maling-mali po yan. Hindi po tayo reactive. We are guided by science. Kaya nga po hindi alam ng marami na bukod pa doon sa 300 o 30 ba o 300 yung sabi ni Dr. Althea na tao sa Epidemiological Bureau nila. 300 staff ata, no? Bukod pa doon sa 300 staff members sa ating Epidemiological Bureau ng DOH, meron ba tayong mga consultants, kasama na nga po dyan yung faster. So lahat po ng decision natin nakabase sa siyensya. Now kung maalala nyo yung graph, ewan ko kung mapapakita pa natin yung graph, no? Makikita naman natin na in fact yung inaasahan natin pagsipa ay hindi pa po mangyayari until August 15. Pero ako po as movant na bigyan ng 1 week palugit ang publiko at ang gobyerno para paghandaan ng ayuda at iba pang mga bagay, ayoko namang i-push na August 15 ang lockdown dahil baka mamaya too late na nga po yun dahil nakikita natin tumataas na. No? Pero sa ngayon po, itong linggong palugit ay wala pong danger na mauubusan tayo ng hospital facilities dahil tumataas, pero pinaghandaan naman po natin yan yung mga nakalipas na araw. So ang gusto lang po natin, we hope that this will be our last ever lockdown. Bakit po? Kasi tumataas na yung numero ng ating pagbabakuna. Inaasahan po natin na bagamat ang numero ay tataas pa, bagamat tumataas din ang ating mga nababakunahan na, yung mga nangyayari sa mga bansa gaya ng Israel at Estados Unidos ay mangyayari rin dito. Maski tumaas pa ang numero, hindi na po sila nagkakasakit ng seryoso o hindi na namamatay. So from now on po, kung ma-achieve natin yung population protection, it's the number of critical and serious cases that will matter and the death rates. Dahil pag bakunado na po, COVID-19 can become an ordinary cold. No? So hindi po siya reactive. We had foresight, we were guided by science, and we are preparing for what we hope to be our last ever lockdown. Pero nakasalalay po yan doon sa pagbabakuna natin ng ating mga kababayan.
Question from Lanes Capanti of GMA News Online. For Secretary Roque, former Speaker Alvarez said he was disappointed with the President due to poor pandemic response. Is the former Speaker right?
Hindi po. I will flash again our standing in the international community. Sa lahat na magsasabi na mahina ang response natin, how do you explain the fact po na ngayon sa Southeast Asia, pang-anim na lang tayo? At sa buong mundo, ano po ang datos? Hindi po kami nag-imbento nito. Ito po ay galing sa Johns Hopkins. We are number 24 worldwide pagdating sa total cases. Aktibong kaso, 29. Cases per 100,000, 132. At ang pinaka-importante, we are only 86 in the whole world as far as yung mga namamatay. One death is too much. Totoo po yan. Pero in relation to the whole world, number 86. All those na nagsasabi na mali at mahina ang COVID response, I am sorry, you're wrong, and the data will support us.
Okay. Second question po niya, is it true that the DFA was deprived of 30,000 doses of Moderna as claimed by Secretary Roque?
Hindi ko na po pinakikialaman yan. Bahala na po kung yan ay nangyari o hindi ko na po alam yan. Sila na po ang tanongin niya.
From Ivan Mayrina ng GMA News for General Dixon. Sir, paano po ang magiging treatment sa mga quarantine violators? Sila ba ikakasuhan o ikukulong?
Sila po ay initially pagsasabihan at base po sa instruction ng aming Chief NP ay we will treat them humanely. Kung pasaway pa rin po sila, ay dadalhin po namin sa mga dedicated areas na safe naman po mga species na hindi makakahawa o hindi rin sila makahawa para may imbestigahan.
Thank you po. For Yusek Berhere, yung sunod pong tanong ni Ivan Mayrina, nasagot niyo na about the Lambda variant. From ID Taliping of Abante tonight for Secretary Roque, po pwede po bang magpabakuna sa Metro Manila ang mga taga-kalapit bayan gaya ng Cainta at Montalban sa panahon ng ECQ? Dahil hanggang ngayon ay wala pa rin silang schedule bunsod na kawalan pa ng supply ng bakuna sa kanila.
Ang problema po dyan ay dahil iniiwasan nga natin yung siksikan, no? Dahil baka maging super spreader events yan sa panahon ng ECQ, kinakailangan meron pong prior registration sa inyong LGU. So, kinakailangan po yun dahil dinidiscourage nga po natin yung mga walk-in.
Second pong tanong niya, humihingi ng tulong kay Pangulong Duterte ang mga taga-Occidental Mindoro dahil sa matinding problema sa brownout na nararanasan nila araw-araw. Sana daw po ay kalampagin ng national government ang mga kinauukulan para mabawasan ang kanilang dinaranas na sakripisyo.
Makakarating po yung reklamo nila, hindi lang kay Presidente, kundi sa ating Department of Energy, sa NGCP at kung sino pa ang dapat pagbigyan ng notice. No? Kasama na rin siguro po dyan ang ERC.
From Rosalie Cos ng UNTV, para po kay Yusek Berhere, ano po ang tulong na may bibigay ng Department of Health sa private hospital? Ready po sila in terms of additional hospital beds. Problema daw po nila ay limited ang kanilang manpower.
Yes, Yusek Roque, no? So na-experience na ho natin ito in the past increase in cases. Like nung nag-increase po ang kaso ng 2020 last July and then ito uling March, yun pong ating mga private hospitals, nabibigyan din po natin sila ng tulong as to healthcare workers, nabibigyan natin ng tulong as to logistical supply. So kailangan lang po magsabi sila sa amin para we can be able to provide them with the needed assistance.
From Raymond Tinasa ng Bombo Radio, for Secretary Roque, silver medal na nakuha ni Nesty Petesio sa katatapos na laban sa Japanese boxer. Talo pero silver pa rin. Ano daw po ang statement ng Palace?
Well, in fact, we broke it. We broke the news na silver po tayo. We congratulate Nesty. She made us very proud. And as usual, no, ang kwento po ni Nesty ay kwento ng buong sambayan ng Pilipino. Tayo po ay